Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today in this video we will be ranking killers by their chances of surviving Dexter. The tiers in this video will be impossible, meaning Dexter has no chance of winning. Unlikely, meaning more likely that not Dexter would die trying, but has a chance. 50-50, this could go either way. Light work, this will be pretty easy for Dexter. And too easy, which is self-explanatory. Alright, let's get into it. First, we have Heisenberg. With Heisenberg, I'm pretty sure Dexter wins. Dexter has over 130 direct kills, whereas Walter has about 20 direct kills, and 160 plus indirect kills. Dexter is a killing machine, driven solely by his code. Dexter is pretty damn fine in hand-to-hand, to say the least. But compared to Dexter, Walter is relatively sane. This may prolong the fight, but ultimately Dexter would win. Why? Though Walt has adapted to a life of crime, he's not bringing anything to the table that Dexter shouldn't be able to handle, for Dexter has even handled the Ice Truck Killer, the Trinity Killer, the Doomsday Killer, the Brain Surgeon, along with others. Dexter has superior stealth abilities, combat techniques, and has been in the killing business for a longer time than Walt. However, when the intellectual quota is considered, I tend to think that Walter is marginally smarter than Dexter, but in the end, stealth will play a much bigger role here, and Walter may end up getting a needle in his neck. Walter wouldn't be able to fight back a ripped man with his bad cough. Oh, let's also not forget the age factor. So eventually, Dexter would kill, chop, and toss the remains of the genius Heisenberg in the Florida Everglades. Heisenberg will be light work for Dexter. With Hannibal Lecter, I'd say it's somewhere between impossible and highly unlikely for Dexter to win. In a direct confrontation, Dexter has the better physicals. He's in prime shape and has trained fairly extensively for direct combat, good both hand-to-hand and with a blade. Hannibal doesn't have much of a physical presence in the movies, unlike the TV show. However, he does have martial arts training, in particular Kenjutsu, which is an umbrella term for all the schools of Japanese swordsmanship. Not sure how useful that would be in the real world compared to Dexter's jiu-jitsu training. I'd say Dexter has a slight edge on this one. As for intelligence, Dexter is definitely quite above average and has outsmarted his fair share of professionals. There's something to be said for a guy who was able to hide in plain sight for as long as he did, while also being a top-performing forensic specialist. However, genius-level intellect and manipulations is Hannibal's thing, and he's driven people to severe self-harm and suicide using nothing but his skills as a psychiatrist. His prep and planning feats are also superior, given that he was able to slip out of federal custody at the first opportunity he was given. Hannibal is also much more calm and collected compared to Dexter, who has lost his cool on more than one occasion. If Lecter knows he's being stalked, and he's intimately familiar with the inner workings of other sociopaths, Dexter has been outed by his prey before, and Hannibal puts most of them to shame. My guess is Hannibal catches Dexter in the act, reverses the game, and uses psychological warfare to get at everyone Dexter is close to. At his wit's end, Dexter gets lured into a trap of some kind when Hannibal gets a hold of Harrison or Deb. Probably Deb, since Lecter hates rude people, or threatens to out Dexter. Lecter 9 out of 10 in this scenario, probably with Dexter killing himself, so Lecter doesn't even need to get his hands dirty. You can't let this guy know you're coming for him. Only way I see Dexter winning is if he abandons his ties to his loved ones and lets them die for a chance at a direct fight, or if Lecter takes a liking to the bright young serial killer and lets him go after a dramatic confrontation. Next up, we have Joe Goldberg. With Joe Goldberg, I'd say it would be light work for Dexter. While Joe is portrayed as a deeply obsessive, impulsive stalker who readily justifies his actions with a warped sense of romantic love, making Dexter appear more refined in his killing methods compared to Joe's chaotic approach, and potentially giving Dexter the edge in a hypothetical confrontation. Dexter would be 2 steps ahead of Joe before he even realized what was happening. Dexter had his resources working for law enforcement and has access to a police database. He can access Joe's records, address, stalk him out like he usually does, and try to befriend or talk to the guy. Joe would think he's being the stalker and trying to figure out Dexter, but Dexter is 2 steps ahead, playing Joe's game. While Joe was pretty smart at times, he was also pretty dumb and sloppy most of all. Throughout the series, Joe had 10 victims and only successfully covered up 3 of them. He's an amateur compared to Dexter. Dexter would have no problem killing Joe. Next up, we have the Joker. I'd give it 50-50. Dexter versus Joker is an interesting matchup. We know that Dexter Morgan is a formidable hand-to-hand combatant. He studied jiu-jitsu in college and is capable of fighting Dokes, a former Army Ranger, to a stalemate in their brief skirmish. We also know that Dexter is proficient with firearms. Harry trained him to hunt and shoot, even though he doesn't typically use them. Conversely, we don't know a lot about Joker's background. There are a lot of compelling theories online that suggest he's a former soldier, and I would argue this is supported by the Joker's prowess with rigging up explosives. He also uses an RPG to blow up a moving cop car, which suggests some kind of military weapons training. There's virtually no way he could have become proficient with an RPG as a civilian. So if we assume that the Joker is a former soldier, we also have to assume that he has some degree of training with firearms and in unarmed combat. This puts him roughly on par with Dexter in terms of overall combat prowess. Although these two are pretty evenly matched, I'm inclined to give Dexter Morgan the edge in a hand-to-hand situation. This assessment is based almost entirely on the aforementioned fight with Dokes, who was the stronger man with the superior formal training. If Dex can neutralize Dokes, he can neutralize the Joker. I'm assuming this is a head-to-head fight and that Dexter doesn't get the drop on the Joker. Obviously, it's a wrap for J-Man if he gets injected with M99. However, if it comes to a firefight, I think the Joker takes this one. Dexter is handy with pistols and hunting rifles, but I imagine the Joker is coming strapped with military-grade hardware given his ability and procure an RPG. We're talking an M4, an HK-416, etc. It's highly likely that Dexter will be outgunned in an armed confrontation with the Joker. Next, we have Patrick Bateman. I'd say Patrick Bateman would be light work for Dexter. He is pretty well known to be able to read other people. Once Dexter is able to sense something is off with Bateman, Dexter wouldn't let himself get caught and would be able to stalk Bateman long enough to find evidence. Plus, Dexter just has so much more experience in serial killing. The tricky thing for Patrick is that Dexter regularly stalks and kills or overpowers other serial killers, whereas Patrick's never had to fight anyone stronger than a drunken Jared Leto. Bateman's experience as a serial killer is unknown, and we don't actually know when he started killing or how many kills he has. I assume that because Dexter has a kill count in the hundreds, he does have more experience. Bateman is very physically fit, arguably in better shape than Dexter, but Dexter is a far better fighter. Dexter would have no problem killing Bateman. Next up, we have Jack Reacher. With Jack Reacher, it's pretty unlikely Dexter will win, unless he can manage to get the drop on Jack and inject him with M99. Jack Reacher wins this fight comfortably. Jack Reacher has better combat training. He's the former commander of a U.S. Army police unit, and he's just the bigger and stronger man. We've also seen Dexter get his ass handed to him by a larger, stronger opponent. Little Chino, a 6'8" gang enforcer fond of hacking people to death with a machete. He managed to escape his plastic bonds, toss Dex like a rag doll, and escape the kill room. Dexter ultimately got his lick back and killed Little Chino, but he had to use a tranquilizer gun to get the job done. Jack Reacher beats Dexter in an unarmed confrontation. If they use weapons, Jack Reacher also comes out on top. Dexter is good with a gun. Harry taught him well. However, in terms of firearms proficiency and CQC prowess, Jack Reacher is on another level. Reacher wins 100%. Next up, we have Sherlock Holmes. I know it's a bit of an unusual one, but I thought it would be interesting to include him here. Honestly, Dexter would kind of struggle with this one. I don't see any code-related reason for Dexter to kill Sherlock, but self-defense would be why Dexter might set his eyes on Sherlock, though Sherlock doesn't or wouldn't fit his code even remotely. Sherlock sure would pose a threat to Dexter with his level of intelligence. Would he prove Dexter is the Bay Harbor butcher, or would he find himself in Dexter's table? I would go with the former. Sergeant Dokes could figure out something was off about Dexter. This reads that Sherlock will be able to deduce that Dexter is a serial killer and pin him to the cops before Dexter finishes fighting his moral values to make up his mind in killing Sherlock. This would close the case. Anyway, I can't help but wonder if Sherlock would even want to catch Dexter, as he has a tendency to deal out his own justice. But if he did, he would. Sorry, Dexter, but Sherlock is too smart to be tricked by you. I'd say it's pretty unlikely. Borderline impossible. Finally, we have Michael Myers. Let's be brutally honest here. Michael Myers is stupid. He sees someone and just kills them, without giving it any thought or planning. Dexter would see him in the time leading up to trick-or-treat time and figure out his MO pretty quickly. Then he'd find an excuse to be away from the people he needs to keep safe, set up an ambush and sedate the lumbering giant right next to the killing table. Now, to be fair, Michael Myers is pretty strong, so maybe we can break out of the plastic wrap by sheer brute force like Little Chino did. To be fair, though, the only reason that happened was because Dexter took way too long to stab him, and he learned his lesson. He might take a while to strike the killing blow because Michael doesn't talk and Dexter likes to get into his victims' heads, but I believe there have been times when people refused to talk on the table and Dexter killed them anyway. The final chance Myers has to win is that he just happens to survive being stabbed. But that's very unlikely. Dexter knows how to stab a man to kill him, and nobody is just strong enough to survive having their heart split with a hunting knife. I'd say Michael Myers would be light work for Dexter. And that's my tier list. I know I haven't included anyone in the lowest tier, but honestly, I think all of these guys pose some level of threat to Dexter, albeit a small one. I would say, if anybody, it would probably be either Patrick Bateman or Joe Goldberg, who are right on the cusp of being too easy. Do you agree or disagree with my assessment? Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching, and catch you on the next one.